Hi, PerspectaWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Friday, October 26th. Stormy weather on the way for the I-95 corridor region between D.C., Philadelphia, and New York City. Low pressure will intensify along the Carolina coastline later today into tonight and then push northward along the mid-Atlantic coastline, probably reaching the southern part of New Jersey by the midday hours on Saturday. A soaking rain event coming to much of the mid-Atlantic region, and winds will become quite gusty, perhaps up to 30 or 40 miles per hour overnight hours tonight into the day on Saturday out of the east to northeast as low pressure rides up along the mid-Atlantic coastline. A second disturbance will bring additional showers to the region late Sunday night and Monday morning, and then it turns drier for Tuesday and Wednesday. Still below normal temperatures on Tuesday, but a bit milder on Wednesday, which happens to be Halloween Day, shaping up to be a pretty decent day, it looks like, in the mid-Atlantic region for next Wednesday. But we have a lot of rain and wind to get through before we get to that point. Well, one of the things I wanted to talk about this morning was upward motion, because this kind of is a classic example of upward motion related to warm and moist air rising up and over cold and dry air at the surface. We have very warm and moist air mass coming out of the Gulf of Mexico, headed into a cold and dry air mass for this time of the year in the mid-Atlantic region, the northeast U.S. Temperatures this morning in the mid-30s in many areas in the I-95 corridor region, with dew points down in the lower 30s, kind of a winter-like air mass, and we have a ton of moisture riding up to the north and east. Meteorologists, whenever they try to forecast the weather, try to pinpoint areas of upward motion, because as air rises, it cools and condenses, and if it is moist enough, it'll result in clouds and precipitation. And again, this is a classic example here of warm and moist air rising up and over cold and dry air. We'll get into that over the next few minutes. One mechanism of upward motion has to do with simply air moving towards areas of mountains, and the mountain itself forces the air to rise. In this graphical illustration right here, the air is forced to move up, and again, as air rises, it cools and condenses and ultimately can result in clouds and precipitation. On the other side of the mountain, when the air comes down, it's the reverse. It's a drying process, and it often leads to clearing skies and rain-free conditions. Well, a second way to get upward motion in the atmosphere is dealing with a cold frontal system. Now, cold air is denser, heavier than warm air, and moist air is actually less dense than dry air. That might be counter to what a lot of people believe, but baseballs, for example, actually travel farther on a humid night in the summertime compared to when it's dry, because moist air is less dense than dry air. So the heaviest air will be cold and dry, and the lightest air will be warm and moist. So when cold air is advancing in this fashion here behind a cold frontal system, it encounters warmer air ahead of it, and because the colder air is heavier and denser, it forces that warm air up, and that results in a cooling process and condensation, eventually clouds and precipitation. With a cold frontal system, you can have a kind of a quick uplift and kind of violent weather, showers and thunderstorms, generally a shorter type rain event compared to a warm frontal system that we'll talk about next year. But again, this is another way to find upward motion in the atmosphere, with cold air advancing, and it forces the warm air ahead of it to rise rapidly, resulting in showers and thunderstorms. Well, another way to get upward motion in the atmosphere is with the advance of warm air, especially warm and humid air that will rise up and over the denser cold and dry air. And this is a situation that we're encountering later today and tonight into the day on Saturday here in the mid-Atlantic region, northeast U.S. We have cold and dry air in place, and very warm and moist air is advancing to the north and east from the Gulf of Mexico. And that cold air is staying in place here in the mid-Atlantic region because of what we often refer to as high latitude blocking. This is actually a great setup for the winter time. If in fact we were a month or two later, this could be a snowstorm developing here with cold air locked in place because of blocking over southeastern part of Canada. But in this particular scenario, you get the warm, humid air that is lighter than the cold, dry air at the surface, and therefore it is forced to rise up and over that colder and denser air at the surface. This is what is happening later today and tonight. Warm, moist air from the Gulf of Mexico forced to rise up and over the cold and dry air entrenched at the surface here in the Mid-Atlantic region. This typically results in a longer type of rain event compared to cold frontal systems, and you may end up with a steady period of rain as compared to shower and thunderstorm type of rain event associated with cold fronts. But again, this is what we're dealing with later today and tonight into the day on Saturday in the Mid-Atlantic region. Well, now let's take a look at the surface map as we begin the day on Friday. And again, we have high pressure situated right on top of the northeast U.S., a cold and dry air mass in place. Temperatures a couple hours ago with 35 degrees of Pottstown, Pennsylvania, for example, some 20-25 miles northwest of Philly, dew point of 32. That is winter-like cold and dry air at the surface. Because of blocking in the southeastern part of Canada, this cold air is kind of anchored in place, anchored also by this high pressure system. Meanwhile, low pressure is forming down over the Gulf states. This is just a batch of warm and moist air. Some of that moisture left over from Hurricane Willa earlier in the week. This is moving to the north and east, will be forced to rise up and over that cold and dry air at the surface, resulting in clouds and a soaking, relatively long rain event for the Mid-Atlantic region. Well, before we get to the surface maps and the upper air maps for this upcoming event, here's a look at the radar. Again, warm, moist air rising up and over cold, dry air in the Mid-Atlantic region, already resulting in some significant rainfall down across southwestern Virginia. Probably arrives in the D.C. metro region during the mid-afternoon hours, maybe late afternoon in Philly, and early evening up in New York City. And it'll rain hard later on tonight into the overnight hours, into the morning hours on Saturday, as low pressure moves from the Carolina coastline to the right near the coastline in the Mid-Atlantic region. Could be right around interior southern New Jersey by the midday hours on Saturday. Well, let's take a look at the 500 millibar height anomaly pattern for late tomorrow into tomorrow night hours. Two big features here I want to emphasize. One is situated right in this region right here with a deep upper level trough over the southeastern part of the U.S. That is associated with this initial rain event from later today through tonight, through much of the day on Saturday. Then there is a second disturbance here, not as strong. This is a weaker system, but nonetheless, it rotates through this deep upper level trough and causes additional showers in D.C., Philadelphia, New York City, late Sunday night, early Monday morning. So again, two features here in the upper part of the atmosphere as of tomorrow night. This is the main event right here, and this is associated with that surface coastal storm that again will intensify late today, early tonight, right in this region right here over the Carolina coastline, and then move northward towards southern New Jersey by the middle of the day on Saturday. Well, speaking of upward motion, and again, weather forecasters try to focus in on areas of upward motion. Jet streaks are crucial to try to determine where the air is converging, where it's diverging. This is actually a forecast map for late tomorrow afternoon, Saturday afternoon, associated with this coastal storm. The jet streak at 250 millibars, way up in the atmosphere. And the way jet streaks work is on the left exit side of the jet streak, which would be right in this region right here, there is upward motion at the surface. Also on the right entrance side, there is upward motion, and I'm indicating the upward motion here by the pluses. On the other sides, you have downward motion, and this is a kind of a classic setup with that upper level 500 millibar upper level low we just saw a moment ago in the southeast U.S. There's a jet streak associated with it. The main upward motion associated with that jet streak right over the Mid-Atlantic region tomorrow afternoon. And again, This is kind of a classic case of upward motion associated with a jet streak in this case. In this particular case, it's right along the I-95 corridor of the Mid-Atlantic region during the day on Saturday, associated with that surface coastal storm that moves up from the Carolina coastline to southern New Jersey by the middle of the day on Saturday. Well, let's now walk through the surface forecast maps from last night's 6Z GFS model run, beginning this morning, Friday morning. Again, cold, dry air in place here in the Mid-Atlantic region, the northeast U.S., and here comes the moisture out of the Gulf of Mexico to the northeast. There's a reflection of a surface low right now, early this morning, over the Tennessee Valley, but that'll jump towards the Carolina coastline. Let's jump ahead here by this evening, and here's the development, the intensification of low pressure by early tonight along the Carolina coastline. Again, the rain reaches D.C. mid-afternoon, maybe late afternoon in Philly, early evening in New York City. Here's the low pressure area. Let's move ahead here. Heavy rain, soaking rain, breaks out in the overnight hours from D.C. eventually to Philadelphia and New York City. And here's intensification of that low by the middle of tonight. Let's move forward here. That low pushes northward, perhaps inland a little bit over the Delmarva Peninsula, reaching the southern part of New Jersey by the middle of tomorrow. And heavy rain extends all the way up to the New York City metro region, also in the suburban areas to the north and west of I-95. Notice a little bit of blue here. Again, this would be a classic winter-type snowstorm for much of the northeast U.S. if it were a month or two from now. Nonetheless, there's some snow potential in the interior, higher elevation regions of New York State and New England associated with this particular event here. Let's move ahead another 6 hours. More snow showing up here in blue across western Maine and the northern New England areas of northern Vermont, northern New Hampshire. And look at the pressure gradient here by early tomorrow afternoon. Very tight black lines here, isobars. This will result in, or is indicative of, 30 to 40, perhaps even higher wind gusts out of the east to northeast during the midday hours on Saturday associated with this coastal storm. Again, a very tight pressure gradient here, even some snow up in the higher elevation regions of New England. Let's now move ahead. That starts to push to the north and east. Now even some purple showing up in northern Maine. That's freezing rain or sleet, some snow on the backside here in the southeastern part of Canada. Once this pushes off to the north and east, and here we are by Sunday morning, a break in the action here in D.C., Philadelphia, New York City. Sunday may actually turn out to be a semi-decent day. Still lots of clouds. We cannot rule out an interval or two of sunshine. Probably rain-free. Cannot rule out a shower or so. But this secondary system holds off until late Sunday night, early Monday. Let's move forward. And here we go by late Sunday night, in the midnight hour or shortly after midnight, some more showers arrive in D.C., Philadelphia, New York City. This will not be equivalent to the front-end event from later today into tomorrow. The heaviest rain and strongest winds certainly associated with this initial event over the next 24 to 36 hours or so, but there is a secondary disturbance. We saw that upper-level feature hanging back over the northern plains on Saturday. That arrives with some showers late Sunday night, early Monday. Here we go now by Monday morning. That pushes away. We stay chilly on Monday afternoon and Tuesday. High pressure overhead here going into Tuesday, still below normal temperatures. But then by Wednesday morning, right here, strong frontal system starts to approach the Midwest, and we'll actually get a southwest flow ahead of that here in the I-95 corridor. We're talking about next Wednesday, Halloween day, and that should boost temperatures, perhaps 60 degrees or higher by Wednesday afternoon of next week, probably holding on to the rain-free conditions through most of the day on Halloween. But again, until we get to that point, we have a lot of rain and wind to go through. A coastal storm will produce some tremendous upward motion in the Mid-Atlantic region over the next 24 hours or so. Heavier rain moves in later today, continues in the overnight hours and through much of the day on Saturday. A break in the action for Saturday night and Sunday, and then additional showers late Sunday night and Monday. That's it for now. For PerspectaWeather.com, I'm meteorologist Paul Dorian.